What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my Week 2 top 20 quarterback rankings, splitting these guys up into different tiers. If you enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe. But let's just dive right into it here. And starting off in Tier 1, these are the two stud quarterbacks that went toe-to-toe on Sunday Night Football. It is Josh Allen, it is Lamar Jackson. Both of these guys are pretty much matchup proof. I'm not super concerned about, Josh Allen going up against the Jets defense, Lamar Jackson going up against the Browns defense. They were both tier 1 heading into the season. They're going to be tier 1 for me heading into week 2. Now looking at tier 2, I'm actually going to start off this tier with Joe Burrow, coming off a pretty rough debut, only 113 passing yards, 1 touchdown. It was a pretty rough game. Flat out, not a great performance if you started Joe Burrow, but I think he's in a nice spot for a bounce back here. The Bengals have the second highest implied point total. I like this matchup here against the Jaguars. And then you combine that with the fact that both Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels kind of have tougher matchups. That's what bumps Joe Burrow up here to my quarterback 3 spot. And then for the Eagles and the Commanders, they are tied for 15th in terms of implied points. So Vegas is not expecting these offenses to have boom games. You have Hurts going up against the Chiefs, pretty tough defense. You have Jaden Daniels going up against the Packers, an even tougher defense. So I still think these guys are obviously playable, but they're going to be my quarterback 4 and my quarterback 5. Now, looking at tier 3, pretty fun tier here. A couple of these dudes had a big week 1. We're going to start off with Justin Fields, and I really could not be happier for Justin Fields. I thought he looked amazing. 218 passing yards, a passing touchdown, on the ground, 48 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. I think that is the best his pocket presence has ever looked in a game. I'm a Bears fan. I've seen a lot of Justin Fields, so I'm happy for the guy. This is probably going to be a trailing game script going up against the Bills, but Justin Fields has the rushing upside. I liked what we saw out of him as a passer, so he will be my quarterback 6. Then we have Kyler Murray. I think this is a solid matchup here against the Panthers. He had a solid week 1, showcased the rushing upside, 7 carries for 38 yards. The Cardinals are expected to put up points. They have the 6th highest implied point total. I think Kyler's a really solid mid-tier QB1 this week. And then the last guy in this tier, someone who I'm also pretty excited to talk about, all the way up at quarterback 8, is Justin Herbert. I've been a big fan of Herbert. He hasn't necessarily been in the best situations over the last couple of seasons, but the Chargers went out week 1. They let him rip it. 318 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, showcased the legs, 7 carries, 32 rushing yards. It seems like with Harbaugh coming in, they're much more interested in using Herbert's athleticism, which I think is obviously great for fantasy. We know from a passing perspective, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And then the weapons are kind of coming around. You have Lad McConkey, you have Keenan Allen, who looks a lot better than he did last year. Quentin Johnston, potential year 3 breakout. I like Justin Herbert here to close out tier 3. Now moving into tier 4, going to start off with Patrick Mahomes, and this is where we're kind of getting into a much larger tier. Now the weapons are not looking great for Patrick Mahomes. No Rashee Rice, no Xavier Worthy. I did really like what we saw out of him using his legs in week 1, 6 carries, 57 yards, and a touchdown. Now, if you wanted to dock him a little bit more just due to the lack of weapons, I get it. Eagles defense, on paper, not the best matchup, but that defense didn't look amazing week 1, although Carter, did miss pretty much that entire game. So Mahomes, he's in a large tier 4. This is kind of just betting on the talent, the ability of Mahomes, even though he's not in the best offensive situation right now. Then is my quarterback 10. I'm going to go with Trevor Lawrence. I thought he was a really nice play in week 1. Didn't really pan out. I think this Bengals game does have shootout potential. It was just kind of a weird matchup against the Panthers where they have the rain delay. There's the huge break, and then the Panthers just couldn't do anything offensively. So there was really no urgency for this Jaguars offense to rack up a ton of passing volume and really run up the score. So I think we could see a bounce back here from Trevor Lawrence, BTJ getting more involved, Travis Hunter heading into his second game. Then I'm going to have Drake May as my quarterback 11 going up against the Dolphins. He had a fine week 1, probably better from a fantasy perspective than a real life perspective. There was a lot of passing volume. I do think we can see more rushing upside out of Drake May. Didn't do a ton on the ground, but I do think he has that in his bag still. And then this Dolphins defense. They got torched by the Colts. Not exactly scared of this Dolphins defensive unit. My quarterback 12 is going to be Dak Prescott. From a fantasy perspective, he didn't have a great week 1. I actually thought he looked pretty good against, a solid Eagles defense. He's going up against the Giants. The Cowboys have the 7th highest implied point total. I think we're going to see a bounce back here from Dak Prescott. Then I'm going to roll with Brock Purdy. Now, I will say he is dealing with shoulder and toe injuries. We're not sure if he's going to be able to play. Also, his weapons are banged up. George Kittle going on IR. Juwan Jennings banged up, although I do think he's trending towards playing on Sunday. But this is a pretty decent matchup here against the Saints. Brock Purdy showed last year he can still be fantasy relevant even with banged up weapons, has the mobility. I think the 49ers can put up points in this matchup. It just is really going to come down to, how healthy he is and if he's actually going to play. Then I'm going to roll with Baker Mayfield. This is kind of a tough matchup here against the Texans. This is a good defense. The Buccaneers are 23rd in implied points, but Baker still has solid weapons. Mike Evans is there. Emeka Egbuka coming off a really strong debut. Baker kind of struggled from a real-life perspective in week 1. Didn't necessarily hurt for fantasy because I want to say he still threw for 3 touchdowns, but just not a great matchup against the Texans. And then the final guy in this tier is going to be Bo Nix. He really struggled week 1. It was not a great look going up against like a Titans defense that I don't think is super scary. So we could see a bounce back here from Nix against the Colts. He's still going to be a quarterback who has rushing upside. He was really good over like the last 3 quarters of his rookie season. So I'm not panicking after one rough game. I think he can certainly bounce back here in week 2. And then the 5th and final tier, we are going to start off with Caleb Williams. This is pretty much like the NFC North here. We have Caleb, Goff, Love, McCarthy, back to back to back to back. For Caleb, it was kind of an up and down game. I'm a Bears fan, was super excited early on in that game. That first drive looked great. And then it wasn't, super productive after that. The accuracy really has been an issue, but I do think he showcased the rushing upside, the ability to extend plays, 6 carries for 58 yards and a touchdown. Even if he's struggling as a passer and it was not a great matchup going up against the Vikings, if he has that rushing upside, that really does help him out both from a floor and ceiling perspective. Then I have Jared Goff, and this Lions offense really did struggle. It could just be it was a tough week 1 matchup, but you lose both coordinators. The offensive line kind of took a hit. It is somewhat concerning moving forward. I still think they can put up points in this matchup. They're tied for the 4th highest implied point total. I do think this could be a bounce back from Jared Goff. And then Jordan Love. I actually think Love and kind of like all of these Packers pass catchers weapons are going to be an interesting spot this season because the defense might just be so good that they're not going to have to really sling it. There might not be a ton of super high volume passing games, which is not great, especially offensively when they like to disperse their routes so much between 4 different wide receivers where you have, Dobbs, Reed, Golden, Wicks, all getting super involved in week 1, and then Tucker Kraft at the tight end position. But I do think this could be one of those matchups where they have to put up a lot of points, rack up the passing volume. They are tied with the Lions for the 4th highest implied point total, and they're only 3.5 point favorites against the Commanders. So I do think this could be a spot where you play Jordan Love. Then we're going with JJ McCarthy. He looked really, really rough through the first 2.5 quarters. And then he goes out and just has a monster close to the game, ends up leading the comeback, ends up accounting for 3 total touchdowns. So, I'm not overly excited to throw him in my lineup. I'd like to see it over a full game, but he has some of that rushing upside. He obviously has the weapons around him, and it's good that he, did show that he could turn it around late in that game. Then to close out my top 20, I have Michael Penix going up against the Vikings. Not a great matchup. They're going to throw a lot at you as the quarterback, but Penix is coming off a solid week 1, almost threw for 300 yards, a passing touchdown, 6 carries, 21 yards, and a touchdown. It would be nice if he can give, somewhat of a consistent, rushing floor. It's kind of weird because he is a very good athlete. It's just a tendency thing where he doesn't typically look to run. If he can, I think that really helps him both from a floor and ceiling perspective. But that is going to wrap it up for my top 20. Lots of strong options at the quarterback position. If you guys have any questions, comments, feel free to drop them down below. I'll also have my tight end and defense rankings coming out today. If you enjoyed, hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.